When Artyom was 10 years old, he used to fall asleep to the sharp, rhythmic hum of his mother's sewing machine. The sound was steady, almost stubborn, like her heartbeat, refusing to give up even when the world around it felt cracked and tired. Their tiny apartment on the edge of the industrial district shook whenever freight trains roared past at night. The wallpaper peeled at the corners, and in winter, frost bloomed like pale flowers on the inside of the windows. But every evening, Elena would warm his socks on the radiator before putting them on his feet. She would pretend the thin cabbage soup was a village recipe, passed down from great-grandmothers. She would kiss his forehead and whisper, "One day, my son, you won't feel this cold again." Elena had not always been poor. Before tragedy hollowed her life, she and her husband, Mikhail, had dreamed of opening a small tailoring studio together. He worked at the steel factory, and she stitched custom dresses for neighbors. They were not rich, but they laughed often. They planned, they saved, they believed. Then one gray morning, the factory's siren wailed longer than usual. Mikhail never came home. The official report called it an accident, faulty machinery, a collapse, a moment that could not be reversed. The compensation was small, barely enough to cover the funeral and 3 months of rent. Elena remembered standing in the rain beside a freshly dug grave, holding Artyom's tiny hand, realizing that from that day forward, she would have to be both mother and father. She was 28. From then on, survival replaced dreams. She cleaned offices at dawn while Artyom slept. She stitched uniforms in the afternoon. At night, after putting him to bed, she studied accounting from borrowed library books, determined to understand numbers, contracts, taxes, anything that might someday help her build something bigger than exhaustion. Artyom grew up watching her struggle. At first, he adored her. He would sit beside her sewing machine, handing her spools of thread and asking endless questions. "Will we be rich one day?" He would ask innocently. "We're already rich," she would answer, tapping his chest gently. "We have each other." But childhood is soft, adolescence is sharp. By the time Artyom entered middle school, he began to see the difference between himself and the other boys. They wore branded sneakers, he wore repaired ones. They had smartphones, he borrowed classmates' devices to check assignments. During school events, other mothers arrived in neat coats and high heels. Elena arrived breathless from work, smelling faintly of detergent and fabric glue. The first time someone laughed at her, something inside him shifted. "Is that your mom?" a boy whispered loudly in the hallway. "She looks like she cleans our building." The laughter that followed burned deeper than winter wind. Artyom told himself he hated them. But slowly, shame turned its aim toward the easiest target, his mother. He stopped inviting friends over. He avoided walking home with her. If she tried to hug him in public, he would step aside. "Mom, please," he muttered once. "People are watching." Elena noticed. Of course she noticed. But she said nothing. Instead, she worked harder. When Artyom earned top grades in high school, Elena cried in the kitchen, clutching his report card like it was a treasure map. "You'll go to university," she whispered. "You'll have choices." He won a scholarship to one of the city's most prestigious universities, a place filled with children of businessmen, politicians, and entrepreneurs. Elena sold her last piece of jewelry, a thin gold chain from her wedding day, to buy him a second-hand suit for orientation. When she handed it to him, neatly pressed and wrapped in tissue paper, her eyes shone with pride. "Mom, you didn't have to," he said, though relief flickered across his face at the sight of something respectable. "I wanted to," she replied softly. "You're my future." University was another world. Glass buildings, polished marble floors, students who spoke casually about vacations in Italy and ski trips in Switzerland. Artyom adapted quickly. He studied relentlessly, sharpened his speech, observed how the wealthy carried themselves. He learned to mask the parts of his past that felt inconvenient. He told people his father had worked in industry. He described his mother as self-employed, carefully avoiding detail. That was where he met Dasha. She entered the lecture hall like someone accustomed to space parting for her. Confident, elegant, effortlessly charming. She asked sharp questions in class and laughed easily at witty remarks. Her father, she mentioned casually one day, owned one of the largest construction companies in the region. Artyom felt something awaken, ambition wrapped in attraction. Dasha liked him because he was intelligent and driven. He liked her because she represented everything he had ever lacked: ease, status, security. Their relationship blossomed quickly. He began spending more time at her penthouse apartment overlooking the river. The view alone seemed like proof that some people were born above the clouds. Her father, Viktor Sergeyevich, was a man of few smiles and many expectations. He studied Artyom with calculating eyes. "You're on scholarship?" Viktor asked during their first dinner. "Yes, sir." "Good. I respect merit." It was approval, but conditional. As months passed, Artyom found himself pulled deeper into their world. Business dinners, networking events, conversations about investments and mergers. He felt close to the life he had always envied. Then Dasha said the words he had been avoiding. "I want to meet your mother." His stomach tightened. "Why?" he asked too quickly. "Because I love you," she said simply. "And I want to know your family." He stalled for weeks, but Dasha insisted. Eventually, he chose an expensive restaurant, hoping the setting would elevate the situation. He begged his mother not to come. "Mom, it's formal. Very high-level people will be there." "I understand," Elena said calmly. "I'll behave." "That's not what I meant." But she had already chosen her best dress, a modest navy one she had tailored herself years ago. She styled her hair carefully and even bought a small bouquet for Dasha. When she stepped into the restaurant lobby, the contrast was painful. Crystal chandeliers reflected in polished floors. Waiters in white gloves glided between tables. Elena stood there, small but dignified. Dasha greeted her politely, though surprise flickered in her eyes. Artyom felt sweat gather at his temples. Dinner began awkwardly but civil. Elena spoke kindly about Artyom's dedication, his childhood curiosity, his strength. She avoided mentioning hardships. Then Viktor arrived. His gaze was sharp, assessing. Conversation shifted. His questions were no longer polite, they were probing. "And what exactly do you do, Elena?" he asked. "I sew garments. I also take accounting courses." "For personal interest," his tone carried faint amusement. "For growth," she answered steadily. The air grew heavy. After dinner, outside beneath the city lights, Viktor placed a firm hand on Artyom's shoulder. "You are talented," he said. "But understand this, my daughter deserves stability. Legacy. Partnerships that elevate, not complicate." The message was clear. Artyom lay awake that night, staring at the ceiling of his dorm room. He imagined his future, luxury, influence, power. And then he imagined introducing his mother. At corporate galas, hearing whispers, seeing subtle smirks. Fear disguised itself as practicality. The next day, he visited her apartment. She opened the door with a smile. "Did they like me?" she asked gently. He couldn't look at her. "Mom, I think it's better if we don't see each other for a while." The smile faded slowly. "Did I embarrass you?" "No," he snapped, though his voice cracked. "It's just, I have a different life now. Important people, connections. They don't understand our situation." "Our situation," she repeated softly. "You wouldn't fit in," he said. Silence filled the small kitchen, the same kitchen where she had once warmed his socks, where she had cried over his report cards. Her hands trembled, but she clasped them together to hide it. "If staying away helps your future," she whispered, "then I'll stay away." He left without hugging her. As he descended the stairwell, he felt something tug at his chest, but ambition drowned it out. Weeks turned into months. Calls became rare. Visits stopped entirely. He moved into Dasha's world completely. Viktor offered him an internship, then a position. Plans for engagement followed. Elena received no invitation. On the day of Artyom's engagement party, Elena sat alone at her small kitchen table. The sewing machine stood silent. She held an old photograph of Artyom as a child, grinning with missing teeth, flour on his cheeks from helping her bake. Tears slid down quietly. "I hope you're warm," she whispered. "I hope you're loved." But that night, after hours of silent grief, something shifted inside her. If she had lost her son to poverty, then poverty would no longer define her. The next morning, Elena folded away the photograph, wiped her tears, and packed her sewing machine carefully into a box. If she could no longer be part of his future, she would build her own. And this time, she would not ask permission. 5 years passed, but to Artyom they felt like a lifetime compressed into board meetings, forced smiles, and carefully rehearsed gratitude. His marriage to Dasha had been magnificent in appearance, white orchids imported from the Netherlands, a hall draped in crystal curtains, cameras flashing as though royalty were present. Viktor Sergeyevich spared no expense. To outsiders, Artyom looked like a man who had conquered destiny. Inside, he felt owned. The first year, he convinced himself that pressure was normal. Viktor placed him in a managerial role within the company, but every decision required approval. Every success was attributed to guidance. Every mistake, however small, was magnified. You must understand scale, Victor would say in his calm, cutting tone. You are here because I allow it. Dasha, raised in comfort, struggled to understand her husband's growing restlessness. Why are you always so tense? She asked one evening as they stood in their panoramic living room overlooking the river. You have everything, he almost laughed. Everything, except autonomy, except dignity, except the one person who had once believed in him without conditions. Meanwhile, far from the glass towers and tailored suits, Alina's life had unfolded in quiet revolution. After the night she packed away her grief, she enrolled in a government-sponsored small business development program. She was the oldest student in the room. Younger participants whispered about social media strategies and startup culture. Elena listened more than she spoke. But she absorbed everything. She learned about digital marketplaces, supply chains, scalable production. She studied branding. She spent nights watching free online lectures, pausing and replaying until the terminology felt familiar instead of foreign. She began small. Instead of stitching custom dresses one by one, she designed a limited line of practical, elegant office wear for working women, durable fabrics, flattering cuts, affordable pricing. She photographed the clothes herself against a white wall in her apartment and posted them online. At first, orders trickled in slowly. Then something unexpected happened. A local fashion blogger wrote about her. The article's title read, "The Seamstress Who Refused to Quit." It told the story of a widowed mother who built her business from a single sewing machine. Customers were moved, not only by the quality of the clothing, but by the resilience behind it. Orders multiplied. Elena reinvested every ruble. She rented a small workshop. She hired 2 single mothers who needed flexible hours. She paid them fairly, remembering too clearly what desperation felt like. She created structure where there had once been chaos. Within 2 years, her brand became known for ethical production and honest pricing. Corporate clients began placing bulk orders for uniforms. A regional retailer offered shelf space. Elena negotiated carefully, refusing terms that undervalued her work. Confidence replaced hesitation. By the 4th year, she secured a modest loan, backed not by connections, but by performance metrics and growing profit margins. She expanded into a larger facility on the outskirts of the city. Rows of sewing machines now hummed in harmony, not in exhaustion, but in purpose. The day she opened her first small factory, she stood in the center of the production floor and closed her eyes. The sound was no longer survival. It was momentum. Then came the breakthrough. A national retail chain signed a distribution contract. Her designs were featured in storefront windows across multiple cities. Investors began calling, intrigued by the combination of profitability and social responsibility. Elena did not chase fame. But fame found her anyway. A respected financial magazine published its annual list of top self-made women entrepreneurs. On the cover was Elena, poised, dignified, wearing one of her own designs. Her name appeared beneath the photograph. Elena Mikhailova, net worth, $28 million. The number startled even her. Not because she had aimed for wealth, but because wealth had grown naturally from persistence. Across the city, in a sleek glass office bearing the logo of Victor's construction empire, Artyom froze when he saw the cover on a colleague's desk. The world narrowed to the printed image. His mother, not small, not embarrassed, not out of place, radiant, impressive, isn't it? A coworker commented. Self-made, rare these days. Artyom's throat tightened. He locked himself in his office and searched for more information. Articles, interviews, videos. There she was, speaking confidently about sustainable manufacturing and fair labor practices. She mentioned no bitterness, no regret, no son. That night, Artyom confronted Victor. You knew, Artyom said, placing the magazine on the desk between them. Victor glanced at it casually. Of course, she's become strategically relevant. Relevant. Artyom's voice trembled. She's my mother. Victor leaned back. Business is about positioning. She positioned herself well. You, on the other hand, must remain focused. Focused on what? Being indebted to you forever. Victor's eyes hardened. Careful. For the first time in years, Artyom did not look away. He left the office without permission. The address of Alina's headquarters was public. He drove there in a haze, memories colliding with reality. The building was modern but understated, glass walls reflecting the sky, her brand name displayed in clean lettering. Employees moved with quiet efficiency inside. He stepped through the doors feeling smaller than he ever had in childhood. At the reception desk, He cleared his throat. I would like to see Elena Mikhailova. Do you have an appointment? The receptionist asked kindly. No, he admitted. But, I'm her son. The words felt foreign. Minutes later, he was led to a spacious office overlooking the city skyline. Sunlight streamed through wide windows. The decor was elegant but not extravagant. Elena stood by the window. She turned slowly. Time seemed to fold in on itself. He saw faint silver strands in her hair, lines at the corners of her eyes. But he also saw strength, unmistakable, grounded strength. You look well, she said gently. That was all. No accusation, no triumph. He felt his knees weaken. I was ashamed of you, he confessed, the words tumbling out. I chose money. I chose status. I thought you were holding me back. Silence. And now, she asked quietly, now I see that everything I built was borrowed. Conditional. You built something real. Tears blurred his vision. He dropped to his knees, not dramatically, but because he no longer had the strength to stand beneath his own guilt. Can you forgive me? Elena walked closer but did not immediately touch him. Money didn't change me, she said softly. Losing you did. The truth settled between them like fragile glass. For years, she continued, I asked myself where I failed. I wondered if loving you too much made you fragile. If protecting you made you ashamed. He shook his head violently. No, it was me. I was weak. She finally knelt beside him. I never stopped loving you, she whispered. The words broke him completely. He wrapped his arms around her, sobbing, not like a businessman, not like a husband, but like the little boy who once listened to a sewing machine at night. For a long moment, there was nothing but forgiveness. In the weeks that followed, Artyom made decisions he once would have feared. He resigned from Victor's company. The confrontation was brief. You're making a mistake, Victor warned. No, Artyom replied calmly. I already made it 5 years ago. His marriage to Dasha, already fragile under the strain of pride and silence, dissolved soon after. She could not understand why he would leave security for uncertainty. But Artyom was no longer chasing security. He returned to his mother, not as an heir, not as a beneficiary, but as a student. I don't want your money, he said. I want to learn from you. Elena considered him carefully. You start from the bottom, she said firmly. No special treatment, no executive office. I understand. His first day on the factory floor was humbling. Workers recognized his last name from interviews but treated him like any other trainee. He sorted inventory. He packed shipments. He listened to the stories of seamstresses who supported entire families. He saw reflections of the woman he had once dismissed. Months passed. Blisters replaced soft hands. Arrogance dissolved into respect. One evening, after a long day, he stood beside Elena on the rooftop terrace of the headquarters building. The city lights flickered below. I thought wealth meant never worrying again, he said quietly. But I was always worried. About losing approval. About not being enough. Elena smiled faintly. True wealth is freedom from fear. He looked at her, truly looked at her. You were always rich, he admitted. I just couldn't see it. She reached for his hand. Then perhaps losing you was the price I paid to gain myself, she said. And perhaps losing me was what taught you who you wanted to be. The wind carried the distant hum of the city, construction cranes, traffic, ambition. But above it all, there was something steadier. Not the sound of a single sewing machine struggling through the night, but the quiet rhythm of resilience fulfilled. And this time, mother and son stood side by side, not divided by poverty or pride, but united by hard-earned understanding.